Finally hitting the record button.
All right, here we go.
DJ, yep, we're in the middle of a conversation about how getting in shape is the gateway drug to a better life.
Yeah, it's absolutely mandatory. And I'll say, my father, he didn't grow up with a very positive male role model in his life. His father wasn't the greatest person in the world, just keep it simple. So a lot of stuff that he learned was from reading, things that he had to learn later in life, not until he really got into college. So he was able to say, okay, these are the traits that successful people are embodying. The easiest way for me to get what they have is to start imitating them, which is the smartest thing you can do, right? That's what we do as humans. We imitate each other. If I want to be like my older brother, I'll start doing what he does to have what he has. And one thing he would tell us all the time growing up was, when you leave the house, always look presentable. We could never leave the house wearing sweats, never leave the house without our hair being done, because it was like, this is the persona you're presenting to the world.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility to put that forth. I take that absolutely to heart. And I would take it even a farther stretch to say, when you walk around and you're overweight, you're showing people that it's okay not to care.
This episode is sponsored by Black Label Meat. Black Label Meat only sells premium quality meat that is grass-fed, grass-finished, and they do regenerative grazing practices. Check them out now, blacklabelmeatcompany.com, and use the code Jesse for 10% off.
Because deep down, we know for a fact at a physiological level, you should care about your health, and you actually do. Mm-hmm. At a relationship level, I guarantee your spouse wishes that you were actually in prime reproductive health as opposed to how you are now. I'm sure your children want to see you as the Superman, right? We used to love it being kids and being like, hey, my dad can beat up your dad. Like,
yep.
I want to be that dad too. My father is 6'3", 250 for most of his life, so a really big dude. I'm the shortest of the guys. And for me to put that forth, I'm like, yeah, I think those are all very, very valuable things to present to the world. And I think that's a duty. Just as much as I wouldn't litter on the ground because I'm setting a bad example. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to show that I just litter inside my body all day long. And I'm going to walk around completely disheveled. I don't care. You should care, right? And I think I want guys to embody that. So if you say you care about anything at all, if you don't care about your body first, I have trouble believing you. I really do.
It's the only place we have to live. I think Jim Rohn says that.
Yeah.
Take care of your body because it's the only place you have to live. And if you don't take care of your body, it'll never be able to carry your mind where your mind wants to go.
Jim Rohn, he's a beast, man.
Yeah.
He's a beast. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. And then the not wearing sweats out. So my wife is the kind of woman who there's not a single person on this earth who's ever seen her out in public in sweats, looking, her hair not done, her face not presentable.
Yeah.
And when we were young, it was annoying. I'm like, let's just go. We're just going to a movie. We're just going to go do this. Like, let's go. And now that I'm older, we're actually the same age. And I will be out somewhere. I will see people of all ages, not necessarily older than us, but our age and younger, out in sweats, out in pajamas. It made me really appreciate that my wife has never done that. It doesn't matter if she's taking the kids to just do anything. She is presentable. And it was her grandmother, actually, old school grandma, who was the one who instilled that in her. And I am so appreciative because we act like we don't judge, but like you're saying, your physique is a representation of who you are when you're meeting people in the workplace. When other people just don't care about what they look like, because oftentimes I feel like if I'm walking around with my wife and she's in pajamas, that's a reflection of me too. And my leadership, is she
Absolutely.
looking good for me? She care about herself. I praise her all the time for that now, when I used to take it for granted. But it's something
That's
where
amazing.
I'm like,
That's
I
good.
freaking love that you always get ready every time. It don't matter if we're even going to Bible study, with who are supposed to be the closest people.
Every time.
She goes over to her mom's house. Her parents don't see her undone.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I like that.
I fucking love it now.
Well, like you said, because it's also a way of her honoring you by looking your best, right? And on the same token, you honor her by always staying in shape. keeping your hair trimmed, trimming your beard.
Hmm.
These are the kind of things that we do to show respect because we all know objectively when someone takes care of themselves versus someone who doesn't. Now, the
Yes.
way I see it is imagine any particular environment you might go into that garnered the greatest amount of respect. You want to be respectful in the courthouse, respectful at a funeral, respectful in church. How do you dress for that? Well, we know there's a clear defining way to dress, comport yourself, carry yourself in those settings of highest respect. So we also know that there is a template. We all know that making ourselves look better, keeping ourselves fit, polished, and put together is a very respectful thing to do. So
Hmm.
when you do that in everyday life, it just shows you have respect for the people around you. It's very, very simple, right? As opposed to when you don't. Like if you show up to a courtroom and you're wearing board shorts and a tank top, that would be disrespectful,
Yes.
right? And so understanding that is a big deal. It really is.
So where do you think it is that men will often kind of cross that line of presenting themselves and going to where they don't really respect themselves in the way that they are presenting themselves?
I think guys can do it. First is obviously going to be their body. That's number one, right? When I see a guy who's not at least just at a normal, healthy body weight for their height, anything outside of that, to me, I criticize. You could be too skinny, I criticize it. You could be
Hmm.
overweight, I criticize it. I think what a lot of people try to do, especially in society nowadays, is people want to get away from words that might seem like it's harsh or critical, but we need to be harsh and critical. Like if you think of any time that you've actually fixed something in your life, it wasn't when someone came to you and said, "Hey, just to let you know, I mean, your weight, you look great. I love how you look. Your weight is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with being as your size. I think you look great. More power to you. But, I think maybe if you, went to the gym more often, it'd be better." No one ever changes hearing that message.
Hmm.
No one does. No one ever has, especially with men. I think men should be even more harsh. So where it's like, dude, you're overweight. Just call a spade a spade. And I don't think it's disrespectful to tell the truth, especially when it's objective. I tell people all the time, obesity is literally defined as being 30 pounds over your body weight that's relative to your height. So if you're 30 pounds over, I talk to guys all the time who are like about my height, and they'll be around 250. And they'll say, "Oh, I just want to get down to like 225 and I think it'll look good." I said, "No, my friend, you're actually obese now." They're like, "No, I got a lot of muscle." You don't. I know you think you do, but you don't, which
Hmm.
is fine. But if you want to be in prime reproductive health to where you look in the mirror and say, "Damn, I look great," and your wife says, "Damn, babe, you look great," and your kids are like, "Wow, my dad can do anything. He can run, he can jump, he can lift me up. He's the strongest dad in the world." To get to that number, if you're 5'10", you're not 225. At the most, maybe 190 to look at that look. So I tell guys, understanding that, let's aim down to 190. If you get to a point where you love exactly how you look, we can stop there. But be realistic. You're overweight. Be realistic. This is not a healthy weight. If you're thin and emaciated, be realistic. You need to eat food. I don't care if you like eating or not. You're putting forth a bad sign, especially if you don't already have a spouse or a mate and you want to date or marry sometime in the future. They're also going to look at you and make a very, very snap judgment. Does that guy look like he can protect me? Probably not.
Hmm.
And women make a smack the judge just like that, very, very quick. So you have to be very cognizant of that. Like I grew up not being very attractive at all to women. I mean, I was like the textbook nerd. All I did was sketch. I wanted to work for Disney when I was a kid. I was like the shyest kid in the world. Never went on dates, never messed with any girls, not until I got into college. I was extremely introverted to the highest sense.
Hmm.
But guess what? That formula was not successful. So I didn't have to change who I was to become something different. I just said, hey, okay, what are the signs that would make me more attractive? Well, my older brother gets a lot of girls. Well, he has muscles because he goes to the gym. Maybe I should do that. Well, he dresses really well. Maybe I should do that. Hey, this guy over here is very, very good at talking to girls. Maybe I should do that. You start adapting these things to actually create who you are as a man. I think it is a creation process. But to go through life thinking, you know what? I can give life the bare minimum and I should do fine, I think is a lie. I think that if you're average, average is the same as zero. I think you need to be above average to be visible. I really do. And I think that type of vision is what we see when we're like, you know what? That guy's about his stuff. Imagine a guy comes up to you and says something about, hey, you should really go to church and, I think there's a great spiritual message for you. But the guy's fat, he's overweight, he's got crumbs on his shirt, his beard's all scraggly. You're like, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Hmm.
Fantastic. But if a guy like you comes up polishing a suit, hey, you should check out this church. You're like, wow, there's something there. Maybe there is something in this church. It's your responsibility to be able to represent anything that you actually care for. It starts with the fit body.
So let me know if you agree with this. I believe that any man on earth, especially here in America,
Hmm.
when we look at the scale of 1 to 10, when we rate people, hotness, good, all that thing, every man has the ability to at least be a 7 in the United States.
I
He
agree.
can go to the gym, and he might, like how you said you started off. You're like, I was not what women were looking for. It's like he can go to the gym, he can clean himself up, he can improve his personality. And here's how I know that you can improve your personality. I was a shy fucking kid. I did not want to talk to anybody. And I was hitting the gym, and I'm not a terribly looking guy, but it was to the point where it was like I had to pretend like I was on a movie set just to get myself to get out of my shell.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is a movie. And now someone might be like, well, you're acting. That's being fake. It's like, you might look at it that way. But I looked at it as like I had to push myself out of the comfort zone till something just became normal. And then I could show off a big personality. I could show off being funny and exciting because I swear, man, I was the shyest fucking kid. I didn't care if the hot girl liked me. It's like, I ain't fucking talking to nobody. So, anyways, you can make money, you can hit the gym, present yourself nicely. Depending on uh, the culture, you can be a man of faith, whatever culture that is. You can do these things to completely improve yourself on a scale. People are, why do there has to be a scale? Well, there is.
There is.
There is. It's just the harsh reality. I guess, what do you think in today's day and age is the reason why men have this mindset to not be part of a tribe of men who look like they're straight out of the movie 300, and instead we've became these frumpy men who don't care if we have beer bellies, who don't care that we're living in quiet desperation? Like, how do we fix that mindset to just be fucking Leonidas and all his boys versus the guys who are around today?
I think that's an interesting question because I think that if you were to take someone from our generation, we were probably the last generation to where we grew up looking at like male action stars in the 90s doing really amazing shit, blowing shit up,
Mm-hmm.
kicking ass. And we had a good representation of, okay, what is it like to be in school, be around our peers, having fun? And then also what is something to look up to aspire to, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that the generation coming right after us, I think that from a young age, they've grown up completely steeped into the idea of you're a boy and what boys do is bad. And they pretty much pathologized what being male actually means. Oh, you don't want to sit down all day and just listen to a teacher talk. You actually want to run around and play around. No, you should sit down. You're misbehaving. Oh, you can't pay attention in class for multiple hours without feeling fidgety. Well, then you need some ADD medication, right? A lot of things have gone on to where we've lived, the generation coming out after this, they've lived in a culture of demonizing patriarchy more than we've probably ever seen before,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because of it, now trying to get them out of it, now they're like, wait a second, you're trying to tell me that everything I learned growing up was wrong? Because my mom always told me that those guys who are entrepreneurs are the evil billionaires who are always the villains in every single movie, right? They
Yeah.
always told that big guy, he's the bully that picks on the small little guy. And you don't want to be mean. So now muscles, entrepreneurship, wealth, they're all negatives. And what's the best thing you can do? Well, just kind of act like a defective girl. Just sit there and be polite. Say yes. If a girl says something, just agree with her. Otherwise, you're mansplaining. Like, this is a very, very deep concept that these boys are being conditioned in. Add to the fact that there are really no male teachers existing, under, I'd say maybe seventh or eighth grade, almost zero. I think the stat I heard a little while ago is that there are less male kindergarten teachers than there are female pilots, fighter pilots in the U.S.
Wow.
That's basically zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a crazy, crazy low number. So I think you add that. I think you add that to a culture of if I act more docile, if I don't act like I want to be strong, if I don't exert any sort of my own nature, I get rewarded. I get a cookie. But as soon as I act like a boy, I get shunned.
Hmm.
Well, then after a while, the kid's just going to do that. And then now growing up, they're like, well, why would I want to have muscles? That's the mean patriarchy. Like I'd rather watch a superhero movie where a girl is beating the crap out of 10 grown dudes because the dudes are always these big old massive guys who look super strong. This super little tiny thin girl is beating the crap out of them and knocking them out, no problem. And guys are like, yeah, you go, girl. And guys just end up following that troop, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with nowadays, even the guys I talk to, I'm trying to push over a couple decades of them learning that you doing what you want to do is a negative and letting guys understand, hey, it's okay to be masculine. Like toxic masculinity is not a thing. That is a lie. It is a lie told to you by people that you want to believe. You can't pathologize male nature, just like we'd never pathologize female nature. We are different, but that's what makes us beautiful. We are meant to work together. God made us to work together. So to say that one is evil, that's the wrong enemy to have in life. And I talk to a lot of guys about that. Hey, because a lot of guys I talk to, one of the biggest issues into getting into fitness, it's actually not what you think. The biggest issue I run into is men being addicted to pornography, but at a level I never even contemplated before having a social media page. I mean, other than the suicide conversations that I have every couple days with a lot of guys, which is actually really wild. That's a very, very alarming statistic. I can tell you anecdotally has gotten worse. I'll have guys tell me my issue with pornography is not that I'm, whacking off once a day or twice a day. DJ, I can't even go to work because I can't get away from my computer. I haven't gone to school in several days because I won't leave my computer. It's at a crazy level, right? Now imagine back when you were in elementary school, I was in elementary school. If you wanted to see a girl nude, maybe one of your homies like tore a page out of their dad's like Playboy and brought it to
Hmm.
school. It's all folded
Yeah.
up. You're like, oh, this is the one thing. But imagine being a kid and you've always had it en masse at all times. It's so worked into the wiring in your brain that you're thinking to yourself, like, why would I want to be big and strong? I'm just really allured by this. So it's a combination of be docile, don't make any noise, sit there, be a good boy, and then just look at your screen all day. Now they're just like, well, can I even act? Because I just want to kind of be near my screen. Because my screen is so good. It's got video games, it's got pornography, it's got everything I want right here in the screen. And I don't want to be mean to girls. So you go, girl, you go ahead and run the world, and I'll stay here in my screens. That's what I'm dealing with. And so it's a different mind frame. I thought for sure, I was like, oh, cool. Hey, you want to get girls? Do this. They're like, well, I don't need to get girls if I can just whack off. That's the sensation that I want. You're like, okay, we got to reframe that. Yeah. So it's a different angle. It really is. It's interesting.
No, that is weird because, like you said, when we were growing up, I mean, I didn't even have a fucking computer till I was maybe in like seventh grade,
Yeah. Yeah.
and even then it was like dial up internet through a
Oh,
disc
absolutely. With the,
of
with the modem and stuff.
AOL,
Oh, yeah.
and so there was never anything like that, and I never grew up with the problem like of porn. Like I like you always have that one buddy who's like, oh man, I know how to watch porn,
Right.
etc., whatever. But the first time I ever heard of anyone really being addicted was because I'm into powerlifting and doing strongman competitions.
Oh, cool.
There's a
Okay.
YouTube guy who was a big powerlifter who made a random video. Every video is about powerlifting, right? And then he has this one video about his addictions. And he said he was addicted to OnlyFans and he was spending all his money on OnlyFans. And this was
Yeah.
a few years ago. And I'd never even heard of what OnlyFans was. I didn't look into what OnlyFans was. I just was like, dude, that fucking sucks for this guy. Had no idea. A whole year goes by. And then these girls who worked for me, who were employees, they were talking about how do you think that a girl should share her OnlyFans money with her boyfriend? And I'm like, well, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And they were shocked that I didn't know what that was. And it's like, what is this? And then they were trying to, and I'm like, so what you're saying is you're wondering if you should share income from doing sex work because they're like, no, 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 that's not what it's like. No, 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 it is.
It's sex
Even
work.
if it's fucking feet,
Come on, guys. Like, that's the thing.
you
People
know
try to,
the end
yeah.
result.
Thank you.
Like,
Yeah.
and they're just like, hadn't ever thought of it that way. And I'm like, what you're explaining to me is
Yeah.
you're a prostitute just online. Because where's the line when they keep paying you more money? And it started to open these girls' eyes, and then it's like okay, you hear other guys on podcasts talking about OnlyFans or and whatnot or on TikTok, and it's like this is wild that we have a young generation getting into and not that much younger than us.
Right.
And I have cousins who are in college right now, like playing baseball, and they talk about their friends and what you're saying. Why would I need a girlfriend? And I think it's super important for men of all ages to realize just the negative side effects. And then, like you're saying, you don't have a relationship because you have this fictitious relationship with something online. And then you wonder why you're so depressed in X amount of years that you want to kill yourself. Just to begin with, we're so lucky as humans to live in the United States, let alone live in the world in the time that we do. And you're like, I just want to end that.
Yeah.
There's no greater time to live in the world except right now. And you're like, I'm so depressed because all the choices that I've made, because it is the choices they've made, that they want to kill themselves.
Hmm.
It's yeah. So let's talk about how men can get rid of porn addictions. What some of the things that you do to coach men, because they definitely have to desensitize themselves once they actually get into a relationship. One, and then let's go into some of the mental health stuff, because people cry on my page about men's mental health. There's an aspect that I disagree with, and then there is an aspect that I definitely think is valid.
Okay. Yeah, sure,
So
man. I mean,
let's dive into this porn topic.
yeah, let's dive into it. So here's the thing I've learned about porn that I've kind of realized, and this goes hand in hand with what I just said before about male nature being pathologized.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that porn does, if not better than everyone, arguably as good as any other facet of society, is it actually makes a man feel like a man. And here's the reason why. If you're a boy who's always been told, be docile, be more like your female counterparts, don't do this, don't do this. Well, when girls are doing pornography, especially the girls at the highest level, the ones who are getting the most amount of subscriptions, the most amount of guys paying their stuff, they're usually not very attractive women, but you know what they are? They're very, very, very effeminate. Same thing when you go to a strip club. The reason why men will leave their wives and go to the strip club is because their wife is aggressive, binging down on them, yelling at them all day long.
Mm-hmm.
They go to a strip club, and girls what? They know what sells. The opposite of manhood, femininity. So they come in, hi, darling, how's your day? Soft touches. They make you feel like, cool, you're feminine. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
a man now. And it's intrinsic. You can't control it. And what you're getting is these boys who are being told, don't be a man, don't be a man. They meet a girl online who's, hosting a video or, maybe, texting to him, whatever it is, through the chat thing that they have on these interfaces. And it makes him feel like a man. He doesn't know why, no reason why. She's like, hey, how was your day? Oh, I see what you're doing. That's very sweet, honey. And he's just like, wow, for some reason, it's just drawing me in. I just feel like I can be myself with her. She's not judging me. Why? Because she's just showing you the polar opposite. So it's bringing out a part of manhood that they can't identify, and they get addicted to it. Because outside of that screen, the entire world is telling them not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then here's the insidious nature. They also know that they'll actually never get access to her. They'll never actually get that. That makes them feel suicidal. That's what I've learned over the past few months. It's like this weird addictive cycle to where guys are just trying to feel like guys, and girls who are hyper feminine can make you feel like a man instantly. Like if your wife comes home and she's like, oh, hey, honey, how's your day? And she rubs you all softly after rubbing your neck. Oh, hey, I made some food for you. Like, it just instantly relaxes you. Like guys, it's like a magic button, right? And the opposite of that would be a woman who's completely intolerable, who's bearing down on you. We don't
Mm-hmm.
like that. On pornography, the girl's always nice. In strip clubs, the girls are always sweeter than your wife, always nicer than society. It makes you feel stronger. So my way to counteract that is to let them know, hey, look, we got to wean you off the pornography, but I want you to get that same feeling going to the gym, to feel like a man. Here's why it's okay that you're a man. Now, the first thing to do that is, and I made a reel about this a few months ago, you need to have more of a social circle. There's always the idea that people should go into monk mode and work on yourself and be solitary. That's good and all, but that's only if doing that is going to help you to elevate or be more productive in life. If you're being in solitary is forcing you to be on OnlyFans or be it's the video games or pornography, you need to actually have a social group. So I need you to get out of monk mode, spend less time in solitary, and go hang out and find a brotherhood of men who are being active in life. First thing you should do, right? You've got to get out there and start saying, cool, I'm going to spend more time away from the screen than at the screen. Start living life again. Second thing on top of that is change your nighttime routine. So what I tell guys to do is remove all your screens from the place that you lay your head to go to sleep. That way it's more difficult. That means, hey, if you want to go watch pornography, you got to go downstairs. You got to go into an opposite room. Don't even charge your phone in your room. Keep your screens away from your place of sleep. And don't even lie down in your bed unless you're going to go to sleep. Never lie down in your bed on screens because then your brain will associate lying on bed with doom scrolling, right? Other thing I'll have them do is start doing your workouts at night. Because if you're doing a workout around 6 p.m., 7 p.m., and you have a nice, strong, intense workout, by the time you get home, you're going to be exhausted. Good. It's easier to fall asleep. As opposed to working out in the morning or afternoon time, then you're at home, you're like, oh, I got some time, I can just kind of doom scroll. Like everything I do is to try to get them into a correct circadian rhythm, to have them change their nighttime routine and change their habits, to get them out of the house and to sleep faster. I tell guys, the sooner you can go to sleep, if you set an alarm to go to sleep, it's going to be easier to wake up early in the morning. Because a lot of people don't have any alarm to go to sleep. It's just an alarm to wake up, right?
Yeah, I got the go to sleep one.
Yeah, and that's a big
Yeah.
deal. And so I tell guys, like, if you want to feel more like a man, lifting heavy shit is really going to make you feel like a man. You're going to get an immediate endorphin runs. And you're not worried about trying to get adulation from women, which is the last thing I tell them. Don't try to seek the pleasure and seek the adoration of women. You need to become a man using these particular steps, and the right woman will start to be attracted to you. And I can tell you that with 100% certainty. This is how I did it. I first started off being like, hey, I got to make up for lost time. You know, I'm 18, 19 years old, never even kissed a girl. I'm like, man, I got to, try to figure it out. And at the time, I was eager to get out to clubs and go party and do things like that. And it was like brain surgery for me. Like, I just did not understand how to talk to people. I don't, like, at all. Zero. And so it was as painful as for me as any guy out there. I don't care who you are. I used to get the crazy shivers and shakes, and literally you just strike out, strike out, strike out, strike out, strike out. Summer goes by, half a year, another year and a half, and you're just like, dude, you're always striking out. Zero luck. But when you finally get it together, about 2 years in, it's because I've been at the gym for 2 years now. I've been practicing my talking for 2 years now. I've learned how to dress better for 2 years now. I now understand cologne and stuff for 10 years. Then all of a sudden, I hit a stride. But guys don't want that recreation period. They go online and they're like, hey, there's a guy who's 16 years old who's getting all these girls. How come I don't already have that? I'm 19. Right? And they're disillusioned. They think that what they see is so real, they have trouble pulling themselves out of the fantasy and saying, oh, hold on a sec. This actually might be fake. That guy might be paying for these things. Or maybe he's just a dork streamer. And yeah, he makes a lot of money and he has this, but no girls actually like him. He kind of just pays them to be around. They haven't thought that out yet. But the good old fashioned way of putting in the work not only gives you the body you want, the confidence you want, but it builds the character. And I think character for men is the one thing that never comes up in conversation. I never hear a guy say, hey, I want to improve my character. No one. But that's the biggest part of manhood is your character, just like femininity too. If you want to be a woman's character is a big deal. No one ever talks about character. It's something that maybe your father might have talked about, maybe a grandfather, right? So for me, I'm trying to pass on the idea of your character is important. Going online seeking this is a bad character. Putting in the work, even if you don't get the girls right away, that is a good character. We need to build your character. And I think nowadays guys see as building character as building masculinity, which is fine. We can say masculine empowerment, whatever you want to use is fine. But it's building the character is a big deal.
Yeah, and I hope some of these men realize that getting a woman quickly is probably not a high valued woman.
Very true.
Taking the
Very
process
true.
of 2 years working on yourself, working on striking out with women, working on the gym, working on your character, after that 2 year process, the value of a woman that you're going to attract is far greater than that quick one that you wanted in the first 30 days.
Even though you wanted it so bad, you're 100% right. Even
Even
though
though
you
you
really
wanted
want it
it
so
so
bad,
bad.
but at the same time, you don't really know what you want. Like, who really knows what you want at that age? I think all men are equally as dumb at age 20 as every other man out there. We're dumb. We don't know, but we say, hey, this is shiny, this is cool. I just want to go for that, right? But it takes a while when you build things up all the way to the point of, being the age you are now. You're like, oh, I can tell a good woman or a bad woman almost instantly, right? And that's a good form of judgment to where you're like, cool, I can judge a good scenario from a bad scenario, and you can see it
Hmm.
instantly. But it takes the character building over time to do it, as opposed to I'm going to go lock myself in my room, stay away from all society, drown my face inside of VR or video games or something on screens, and expect my life to somehow get better. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't.
No, it definitely does not.
Yeah.
And when you were saying that not to go in monk mode, I completely agree because I believe that masculinity is forged amongst other men.
Hmm.
When you're saying get out there in community, I mean, even I will coach men and tell them, hey, you are an insecure man. One way to overcome your insecurity is to be out there in a community setting, helping other people. Because then you're not focused on these probably fictitious faults that you think you
Right.
have
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
oftentimes. And you're portraying that the rest of the world looks at you that same way when really it's something you've made up.
That's a very good point. That's absolutely true. And I think that just to add on to that point, I think nowadays guys have been so sheltered, they don't even understand how men make each other better.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is we become stronger, man, even from a very, very young age. Imagine, being on a handball court or something like that when you're in first or second grade. Men, we tease each other, but the
Yeah.
teasing is to build each other up. But
Mm-hmm.
these kids nowadays have gone so long without teasing. Oh, that's all bullying. If you say anything bad, so if they feel any teasing, their entire self-worth just goes through the floor. And you're just like, dude, like I'm just messing with you, man. Like being sarcastic, like chill out. But we've almost lost that completely. It went from being like, I mean, I grew up extremely sarcastic. My brother used to whip my ass. My old friends, we clown each other. That was the whole point. It's like, it's men want to know, hey, if I'm rolling with you, I got to know you have my back.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can give you a little tease and you fall apart, bro, I can't trust you if I get jumped by somebody. You're not going to have my back. Like we do that naturally because that's what men do. But
Mm-hmm.
when you tell these kids growing up, hey, all the teasing is bad for you. It's going to hurt you. It's going to harm you. Words are violence. Silence is violence. They're thinking to themselves, man, if I get around other guys, he's just going to make me feel bad. And they're actually
Yep.
presenting like they do with other girls around. They're mimicking women around them, thinking that's the right thing to do because that's how they got the cookie growing up, right? When they got to realize, hey, to be a man, you don't get a cookie. We're going to slap that shit out your hand. The whole point is you don't get the cookie, but you get strong enough to give a cookie to someone else, right? And guys have trouble making that jump where it's like, wait, it's not all about me? I can't just be perfectly selfish? I don't understand. Like, no, you don't get the cookie. You work your ass off to give a cookie to your family, to a woman
Mm-hmm.
that you want, to your
Yeah.
community, right? And that providing sense is a huge gap from those words are really mean, right? I think they have trouble navigating that.
Yeah. Being the whole being selfless
Right.
is a huge pinnacle aspect to me of being a man is being able to sacrifice yourself for those loved ones around you, like you said, to your family, giving them the cookie. It's not all just for you.
Absolutely.
And us demonstrating that to our children so they understand because we're programming our children, etc. They're constantly taking in and observing everything that we do.
Yep.
So I want to jump into kind of the roles of husband and wife. Let's say this guy does, let's say the men out there, they do change themselves or working on themselves for those 2 years. They're in a relationship. They're going to be husband and wife. Like, what are the roles that should be implemented for men and women in a marriage?
I'm much more on the traditional role. And the reason why I like traditional roles is because I think they work.
Mm-hmm.
The way I see it is like you know, if you're playing the NFL and the ruling on the field is that they got a touchdown, well, the ruling on the field is going to stand until you give me proof to overturn it. There has
Mm-hmm.
been no proof to overturn that traditional roles between men and women have been the bedrock of every society's success. There's nothing to overturn it. And we all know what happens when a child grows up in a single parent household,
Yep.
right? Everything drops down tremendously. We also know that the greatest rates or the greatest incidence or probability of child abuse is when there is a step parent also in the household, right? There's so
Yeah.
many reasons as to why a man and woman knowing what the roles are and saying, hey, look, we're not the same. That is a lie that people are trying to convince you of. We are complementary. We are made to be complementary, as in we offer different things. Now, can a man raise a child? Yes. As good as women? I don't think so. I don't think men have enough patience. I don't think we have as much patience as a mom. It amazes me when I see moms, and my sister's got kids and my wife's sister got kids, and I'll see how they are. I'm like, wow, the level of patience is absolutely amazing. Like, it is amazing, right? But that's a mother's love at that age, you know, and there's things that we highlight and that we're better at. And I think the best thing we could do is say, hey, if we're honest about building something strong and true, I'll be the CEO, you be my CFO. We offer different things. I'll be the head of the company. I'll make the final decision, but I need your insight at all times. And hey, you're good at this. I'm good at this. You're good at this. I'm good at this. Cool. Let's stick to that. Boom. Move together as a team. As opposed to, well, you can do it. Well, I did it. Well, I thought this was my job, but I'm going to do it too. That chaos slows things down, just like any team, right? There's no organization that's been successful, no military organization that's been successful to where people are conflating their roles. No, you have a specific set of duties. When you do them and I do them, not only does that breed predictability, predictability breeds trust. Now we're not yelling at each other because we know what's expected out of us. But when you tell people, hey, human beings are the same. You could be a boss babe, and you can also be a stay-at-home mom. You can also be this and this, but you're a guy. You could be a provider, but make sure you don't shout on your wife. Make sure it's like, wait, what should I be doing? Guys like juggling around, and all of a sudden, before you know it, people are kind of just together just for the sake of being together, but not really sure why, because they don't want to be oppressive to each other. As opposed to saying, hey, look, there's a clear definition of what's expected of us. You do this better than me. I do this better than you. Agreed? Cool. Let's work together. Let's move that way.
So, how does a husband or how does a man truly lead his wife if let's say he falls in love with a woman who doesn't necessarily believes in traditional roles, but she's open for her mind being changed? How would you coach
Um,
that guy through that
so
process?
I would be wary that he shouldn't be falling in love with a woman who doesn't understand traditional roles. Because
Okay.
I think what happens, you went past the fence with all the red flags already there, and now you're
Right.
hoping to backtrack and take the flags off after the fact, after you've invested time, energy, emotion. This lady's starting to trust you now, right? I
Hmm.
think that's a bad turn as a man. I think you messed up from the beginning, right? And we're not perfect.
Yeah.
However, you have to be clear about what you want, and a woman will always follow your lead if you're clear about what you want. There's been times when my wife, we've been together for almost 12 years now, and there were times in my 20s when I didn't really know what I wanted in life. And those are the times we had the most tension, right?
Hmm.
And then when I did have a sense of direction, it's like, cool. Now she felt like, cool, I can hold on to this person. Because the way I see it is men are a rock and women are a kite. She's going to pull you all different kinds of ways. She thinks this idea is good. Her emotions go up and down. You know, she's going to shit test you from time to time, but you have to stay stable. To stay stable. But if you start imitating the kite, you guys are both going to fly off into the sky. And
Hmm.
she won't have any trust for you, right? So anytime I hear guys who they're going to ignore the red flags in the beginning and say, cool, how do I get back after the fact? I'm like, well, you started off on the wrong foot. So either you work your ass overtime to reconvince her that you're not the same guy you've been showing her for X amount of months. Surprise, I'm someone new now. I need something new from you, which is probably not going to go well. There's a very good chance that it's just going to have to end. And that's just a hard lesson you got to learn, right? You have to start off on the right foot. Now, is it impossible? No, it's not impossible, but just understand that you've now taken a harder road because however many years and miles you've traveled forward, you now need to backtrack, recollect those red flags and get back to where you were. So if you understand the difficulty in doing that, by all means, but just understand that you've already taken a tough route. Yeah, it's going to be more difficult.
Why do you think most men ignore red flags?
I think I think human beings are very good at assessing their own values generally,
Hmm.
right? A guy who's a 6 will try to get a woman who's around, a 5 or a 4. And it's just people will kind of group up in these little terms. I think when a guy is willing to ignore red flags, it's because they don't think their value is very high. And it might not be,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? So, if you're a guy who's like, you know what, I think I have a high value, but then you're willing to date a woman who already has children in tow, and you haven't taken the time to think about what that actually means, you probably don't have as much value as you think. And the way, and I get down on guys about that because I'm like, look, I want you guys to be very honest with yourself. Consider the stepfather role that you're taking. For one, the child's not yours. Number two, the mom is going to be the main disciplinary now for that child, which means you don't lead the child. She's now the
Yeah.
head of the household. You have to submit to her because it's her kid. right? So she's going to protect her kid over listening to you because she now has an
Yep.
allegiance to her bloodline. That's already a mess up. Second to that, let's assume you have any plans for the future. Well, if the baby's father's still alive and the child's not 18, say you guys want to go on a vacation to Europe. Well, that father has to sign off legally. If he
Yep.
says you're not going, no one's going. Like, why would you put yourself into such a bad scenario? If your value were so high, you can get a woman who doesn't have all that stuff in tow. But if you think that's where you should be, that's a reflection of who you are, right? I think human beings are generally honest that way. So when I see guys doing that, I'm okay, well, that's where you value yourself at. So you get what you get. And that's okay if you're okay with that. But if you think you're this high valuable person, you're not convincing me through your actions.
No, I think this is so good because I've been telling men this forever and women. It's like, what and why did she get separated in the first place?
There's
She
that too.
has children, she's separated. What went wrong? Or even the there's a great one where I've had people say, "Oh, my friend's never been married. She has her own career. She's 40 years old.
Right.
So and so should date her." And I'm like, well, you okay? Fucking red flag. No one was willing to put a ring on her, and she's
Yes.
40. No one was putting a ring on that. If she's what you're describing her to our friend who's single with no kids, this guy, then there should have been a line of other men willing to put a ring on it. And now, but for
Yeah.
some reason, she's open and available to going on a date with our buddy who she's never met. Red flags.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about society is when you conflate the roles to say that men and women are the exact same,
Mhm.
women start thinking that they have the same timeline as men do. And it's weird. They'll go back and forth. They'll say, us women, we all mature faster than men. Men are dumb when they're young. We're so much smarter. And then when men start to regain their intellect and start to get stronger because they've actually built a network, they're starting to, accrue money for themselves, saving, they have a job, building skills, get into the 35s, 40s, women are like, okay, well, I know I'm past my reproductive peak, but I pursued a career just like you. We should just get together. And where do we see this? We see this in all television media, right? There's
Mhm.
always like the guy who's like the most attractive dude who might be in his 40s who's going to try to find another woman in her 40s who also was like the same thing, the same business partner at his work and stuff. It's like, that's not how people pair bond. That's just
Mm-mm.
not accurate. People look, especially competent people, look for the opposite in each other. They want the complementary. If a guy is very direct and assertive, he doesn't want that from his wife. He'd rather a
No.
woman to be more submissive and more, of a follower. Because if she wants the leader, someone has to be a follower. You can't say, I want a man who's a leader, but I want to lead too. That makes no sense. That makes
Yeah,
absolutely
no
zero sense.
no man wants to leave the corporate office, go home because there's a challenge waiting for him. It's like,
That
oh,
that's one thing too. I always get on black
yeah.
ladies in the black community as much as like, my man can't handle me. I'm always like, what's with this handle? That is such a terrible phrase that has never worked
Mhm.
in any relationship. Oh, my wife handles me, right? It's like handles. That's terrible. Not teamwork. Like imagine you're a CEO, you're like, oh yeah, you know what? I have to handle my CFO. What are you talking about? Right? That
Mhm.
is a very unruly, uncooperative person who doesn't want to be there. And they might say things to you, but they're not showing you through their actions that this is what they want. And so yeah, so same thing. If a woman is in her 40s, she has to understand that what men primarily look for is good reproductive health. So if you're shot past the mark, unfortunately, your resume and your accolades don't carry the same weight in the relationship. Now, maybe you might get together with him because he likes the commonalities. He's looking more for a best friend. And there are some guys who like that. Like, I want a girl, I'm 45, I want a girl who's in her 40s. Maybe he already has children. He's like, I'm not going to have kids anymore. I can date this woman. That does happen from time to time. It's just extremely rare, right? So if
Or
you're going to try to guide a woman, it's better to give her advice to say, hey, when you're younger is the best time to look for a mate. Like my wife, she, is getting her master's now. She's a very successful career woman, but we started dating when she was 21. Right? She locked it down quick,
mhm.
right? Because she used her beauty in her youth to get what she wanted. And then after the fact, now she's pursuing a career because we can do it together, right? And that's a big deal. But to say, I'm going to do all that first and then I'm going to look back on the road, I'm 40, to say, where are all the good men at? Well, they're not looking for you. They were looking for you when you were in your 20s, but you don't want
Mhm.
to be with them, right? And there you go.
Yeah, and I often question the the guy who is 40 wants to marry the 40, and again, never been married, no kids either. It's like, is this guy looking for a second mom? Because in his masculine state, he wants a woman to take care of him because he's failing in his own masculine state. Excuse me. So it's like, oh, I want a woman to just kind of be my second mom because she's used to being an authority figure in her workplace, etc. She's the career lady, and
Yep.
she will essentially be taking that lead role in the relationship, and he's fine just cozying up to, she's gonna tell me what to do, she's gonna take care of me. And it's
Yeah.
like, man,
You know what I've learned from that is, have you heard of Dr. Orion Taraban? He's gotten pretty famous over the past few months.
mm-mm.
He does like a psychology channel. He'll talk about relationships for male and female. He had a concept I've never heard before. I've never heard a concept so brilliantly explained. Instead of saying that a man is looking for like a masculine woman to tell him what to do, you have in every relationship, there's two roles. One person is the adorer and one person is the adoree, as in the person who adores someone else and the other person who gets adorned. Now, generally, it works better when a woman is the one who gets to adore her partner. Why? Because the person who adores the other person gets to feel all the beautiful butterflies in the stomach, the ups and downs and the excitement when they walk in. Like they get the emotional benefit, and the person who's adorned gets the benefit of someone adoring them, which is usually better as a male. Now, in a relationship, one or the other is always going to be there. What I find guys will do is if they put so much work and attention into building a business and a company, their same mindset of building a business, they'll put into a woman. All my attention. I'll tell you how much I want you to grow. I want you to get better. Oh, hey, you're great. You're this. They'll almost empower her and power her up because they get the emotional benefit. I get the emotion. I get
Mm.
the gratification of watching this thing grow. Look what I'm building. Look what I'm doing. And then the girl can't really reciprocate. She doesn't get to have the butterfly feelings. So now she gets more of a masculine type role to where she's like, okay, well then I guess I'll kind of just be more like, right? Because only one person can have the benefit of having all the great emotions. And so I think that's what happens with guys is guys will go from the business world that might be successful and they're looking for a woman that they can put on a pedestal, a woman that they can adore. They want the emotions, but then you rob the woman of her nature. So then she says, well, if that's how you're going to be, I guess I'll just tell you, no, I don't like this. And she starts to get ungrateful because she's also not the one leading the relationship in terms of like building things. So now she's kind of like the person literally on the pedestal, on the pillow that you're like, do you like grapes, ma'am? Do you like grapes? No, I can get you apples. Oh, do you like apples now? Because that guy is selfishly absorbing all the emotions, right? And I think that the proper place is for the woman to have the emotions because they are more emotional creatures.
Yeah.
And when you do that and the woman looks up to the man, everything seems to work better. But as a man, you have to be willing to say, hey, look, I get satisfaction knowing that she loves me. It might sound selfish, but you're basically doing the opposite. When the guy wants to be the adorer, then the woman's saying, I get satisfaction of him putting me on a pedestal. Someone's got to win there. Someone, right? And I think that guys, whether it's mistakenly growing up that way, whether it's just mimicking how they build a business and putting it to a woman, maybe it's Western culture has led that way, but I think guys are stealing the emotion away from women because I think men in general just outcompete women in things. Like the best chefs in the world are men. You got men competing in women's sports now because guys just know how to compete. They just want to beat women at everything, right? Which is nonsense. So then a guy's thinking to himself, cool, I can be the best partner. I will be a better partner. I'll be better at emotions. It's the wrong person to compete with.
Yeah, that does not sound, it does not sound like that ends in a good way,
No,
that
usually doesn't.
relationship. No.
Usually doesn't.
I think it reminds me of the video where the second you drop your mission to do something for the woman, she's going to be excited. And
Yeah.
then it keeps snowballing the next time. And then the sixth time, she has left for another man.
And I got that from, there was a book, I forget the author's name. He wrote a book called Toxic Charity. And it's a really
Mm,
interesting concept. So his concept was he's a billionaire philanthropist, I forget the guy's name. But he was saying in, 25, 30 years of doing philanthropic work around the world, what he realized is that he pulled back a lot of his money from charities because he's like, wait a second, this isn't going the right way. And so in all his experience, he's like, look, this is what I've basically understood about charity. The first time you give somebody something, they appreciate it. The next time you give them something, they start to expect the third time. Give
yeah.
it to them a third time, Then all of a sudden they're like, cool, now they really want it. And then the fourth time, they start to feel entitled to it. The fifth time, they're completely dependent on it. And then once you get past that, now it goes from, hey, I just gave you money to help out your village to, hey, where's my money? We demand it now. And then nobody works. Same thing can happen in a relationship. I think a guy can give so much that a woman's just like, okay, well, last year I got 3 gifts and now you're only giving me 2, right? It can just become dismissive because now it's so dependent. And I think that's what people need to understand is, and it doesn't matter if you're male or female, if one person in the relationship does 70%, the other person does not do 70. They do 30. If you do 80, they do 20. That's why working together and understanding your roles is so important so that you guys are 50-50. And I think relationships now, people are so big on being like, cool, I'm going to give you 80%. Where's my 80? No, you get 20, homie. That's just real life. And people need to understand that. Oftentimes you learn it the hard way. I mean, I did. In my relationship before my wife, me and my ex were trying to decide if we were going to get engaged. And so we're like, cool, let's kind of, go through it and figure things out. Oh, it was terrible. I set a terrible precedent for her because I try to do that same idea. I was like, cool, if I can just take care of everything for you and always be that Superman and do everything, never complain. I won't even get sleep. I'll do all the chores around the house, make all the money, do X, Y, Z. She just came to resent me. And I had to get pulled out of that. Right. But it's easy to get lost into it. And that's why I feel it so strongly where it's like, no, that definitely works. Because I understand a guy's need to want to make a woman happy, just like I understand a woman's need to want to make their child happy. Now we know where a woman goes wrong, right? As a guy, you can say, well, if all you do is give your kids sweets and treats, they're going to get screwed. But the mom sometimes can't turn it off. You got to say, hey, no, babe, no more food. They're fine. They don't need extra dessert because they want to make the child happy. We're the same protectiveness over women. Oftentimes we want to make women happy. And that's a very good thing. But we also have to know, am I helping my wife today, but then harming my wife in the future, or vice
Mm-hmm.
versa? And that takes reflection. That takes intelligence.
I think it definitely does. If someone were to look at the relationship that I have with my wife, she's a stay-at-home mom. I actually don't want her to work because then it's taking away from time from me,
Mm.
from my children, from the household. Um, there are nights where I'll help do the dishes. I like to cook. I think I'm a little bit better cook than her. But for the most part, she makes most of the meals. But there's the difference, I think, if someone was to look at our relationship is someone might think that I do all these things, but I make sure to get so much of my own time. I go to bed when I want. Like I said, I have an alarm that's like, all right, everybody, deuces. I'm
Right.
going to bed, giving my hugs and kisses. I'm going to sleep. I get up when I want. I go do 3 miles with my dog. I go to the gym. I don't miss. My wife also doesn't allow me to miss. That's the part where she, like you could say, reciprocates back to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's nothing ever scheduled in my gym times. Now, and then we calendar for her to get her gym time so that gets alone.
Right.
She gets to get her workout in because we've talked about in the fucking beginning. Working out's so important. And I think for women too. Hit them weights. And we'll just calendar that stuff and so that she gets her alone time. We have 2 sons, so I take the boys multiple times to all their sporting things because I like sports. My sons are into sports. So then she gets all these other hours of stuff to herself.
Right.
And but like how I say I do the dishes sometimes for her, that's really like dependent on the cycle or the stress. I'm just feeling out the house. Like, okay, the boys made a disaster. Am I going to have her clean the whole kitchen and this disaster? It's like, boys, you need to clean this stuff up. Otherwise, mom's going to kung fu you. And I don't need to watch
And you're
mom
gonna let
kung
her.
fu you. Yeah. Um, and it's definitely one of those things where in our house it's like, okay, how's she feeling? How's everything been going? Rough day, good day. All right, I'll take care of this because my wife will never go to bed if that kitchen's not spotless, which is another thing I admire. She likes the whole house just fucking clean,
That
and then
is
it
a
just has
very,
to
very good trait.
it has to restart the next day with 2 boys. And then when the cousins come over, because my sister, she's a stay-at-home mom. She homeschools her boys. Our boys are homeschooled. So then sometimes there's 4 boys here.
Right.
But to me, it's a like, I make sure I get my time. She gets her time. We have pretty clear roles of what we're doing, but then communicating and figuring out the energy in that household of how can I help you? How can I help you? And I do want to help her more. There's things where she'll be like, well, how can I help you? And I'm like, by taking care of the kids, like taking care of the house. That's how you can help me, because then I don't feel that I got to go and do this or that. Or one of the things though with my sons, because I have a son who's 7,
Hmm.
I do all disciplining. I don't care if I'm in my office. If something goes wrong, it's like, okay, I know. Come back in 10 minutes, bud, and we'll have a talk. And
Yeah.
I stress to people when I say discipline, it's the word discipline comes from disciple. Like, it doesn't mean I'm beating his ass. It's we are having hard, tough conversations about things. Explain to me what you did. You know, that's one of the things where she's like, "Oh, I love that I get to just send him off to dad at 7 because I have boys." And my younger boy, mom can still do whatever because he needs that love from mom, and mom explains whatever. But the older one, it's like, no, he's mine. That kid is mine. Yeah. So when we're getting in the dynamic and doing too much, like, I guess filling out that energy, being clear, because we are clear and we talk about it. So there's not any um, guessing in the game of how the households run.
Right.
Otherwise, it can be a little chaotic. Otherwise, someone may unknowingly be taking advantage of the situation, trying to do everything, and then someone takes it for granted. Someone resents someone or something, etc. Yeah. Talking about those things and talking about them early, like you said, before you are getting engaged. I always tell people, fucking talk about it early as possible. If they get freaked out, they're obviously not the one.
And they're not serious.
Yeah, they're
Right.
not
Because that's what it
serious.
comes down to. Like anyone who is going to shy away from the family conversation when you're dating doesn't want the family. I mean, that should be right there. Your instant flag to say, cool, this is either green, it's yellow, or it's red. Right. So if someone's like, oh, well, it's too weird to discuss family. I would argue, I mean, when are you supposed to discuss it? After I've invested X amount of time into somebody? I mean, I have other things to do. I'm not going to waste my time or waste yours. At least we can do is say, hey, what are your thoughts on family? Even small things. It doesn't have to be something crazy, but if you're going to have a conversation with someone the first time about family and all you hear are green flags, that's a great sign.
Hmm.
That can even improve the attractiveness of the other person. Where you're like, wow,
Hell yeah.
she's really like that. Like, wow, she's really motherly. Like, this is awesome. So the girl can even be maybe even less attractive than what you like, but as soon as she says stuff like that, you're like, wow, that's like mom material. And you'll hone in. You'll know. And I think that's
Yeah.
important to get to, as opposed to a girl who might be flaming hot and all you get are
Fucking
red flags, and
hates
you're like,
kids
and
and
yeah, right, hates kids,
yeah.
like all those little bastards. I never wanted them. And you're like, damn, this date's over, right? So it's
Exactly.
better
You're
just
a
to get it out. Yeah,
man. You're supposed to spread your seed. I mean, have reproduce in the fact that you're like, well, I mean, she's hot, so I guess we'll keep dating. Or I don't want to ask her, scare her away. It's like you're wasting your time. You're wasting her time as well. I tell people, talk about that stuff early. Get it
yep,
over it, because you never know what's going to happen.
absolutely. And if a guy wants to waste his time, it's probably not that valuable at that
No.
point, right? To where he's like, cool, I just want to date her for the hell of it. It's like, dude, you just have all this random time. But it also shows, I think, to the woman instinctually, this is not a man who has a direction in his life. He's waiting for the woman to tell him what to do, right?
Hmm.
Because women may not verbalize it, but if you're on a date with a woman and she says some things like, oh, I don't like kids, you're like, I completely understand. You know what? It was a pleasure meeting you. I'm going to go ahead and end this thing. I wish you the best, and just leave. She's going to be like, wow, I really respect that guy. Even if she says something, I guarantee you in her mind, she's going to be like, wow, like that was interesting. It's a guy who knows what he wants. And I think as a guy, the best thing you can bring to a woman is a sense of certainty, right? Like one of my favorite quotes, I don't even know who says it, was men don't have to be right, but they have to be sure,
Hmm.
right? Now, we might make mistakes in life. That's going to happen. But a woman's only going to follow you when she knows, hey, look, you're 10 toes down in whatever you believe, and you're going to go there. But if you're finicky, you're back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That unpredictability removes trust, as opposed to the opposite. You were saying you have a schedule you do, go to sleep at the exact same time. Here's my workout schedule. When a woman sees that your schedule is predictable, she has the highest form of trust for you.
Hmm.
And as a guy, you've got to figure that out. The sooner the better.
Oh, so my wife would validate a couple of those things you said. The one about he may not be right, but he is sure. He is sure of himself or the situation. Because when I met my wife, I was trying to raise money for a business.
Okay.
It doesn't mean I was right and that it's going to
Right.
work out and we're going to make all these millions of dollars. But she saw that I was sure and that this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be, you could say, an entrepreneur, a businessman. I am sure that this will work. Doesn't mean it is right. The timing, when I say it's going to happen, etc. And she saw that and was like, okay, he's not just crazy.
Yes.
He's not winging things. That's one. Two, how you were saying a woman will trust a man with structure. So my wife knew who I was because I had a bad reputation before we met. Like she knew of me.
Bad rotation
And
with women?
yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't into like drinking or drugs. I just
Uh-huh.
had a bad reputation with women. And when she realized that I like to eat the same meals every day, she was the first time she mentioned it. She was like, I really like that you like the same thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, why would I change it? And she didn't say it out loud, but I knew she meant, okay, he would be fine once he's committed, he will be fine sleeping with me forever because he's been eating the same meal for 10 years. And
Yeah.
14 years
Yeah.
later of being
Yeah.
together, there was some rough years in the beginning. But however many years of us being together, and I still eat the same fucking food with
Mm-hmm.
minor adjustments. She loved that, was like, wow, because there wasn't ever like I had a bad reputation of like I would cheat on a girlfriend, things like that. There was never that stuff. It was he doesn't date girls, he takes girls on dates type thing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
she was at the bar and she told someone dating Jesse Carstairs, and she said a girl goes, "Does he know that?" And she was like, "Fuck."
Yeah. Which actually makes you a bit more interesting in a way,
Um,
right?
yeah, in
Yeah.
a way, and then, but yeah, it was the habits. If
Right.
you are concrete in your habits, it gives sense of security to women.
Yeah. And
If
women are always
you,
looking for that.
yeah, and there's that safety and security, the fight or flight in a woman. Like a woman wants to feel safe and secure. If you're consistent in your habits, you are consistent in your rituals as a man, going to the gym, hitting that, hitting the weights. You are consistent in the way you present yourself, going to work, not going, oh, I gotta just sleep in this day, like well, ups and downs. A woman just they love those things. It makes them feel good. They're gonna
Yep.
commit to you. Um, quick random story about the talking about wasting people's time. My
Oh.
cousin, who's 15 years younger than me, he got married 2 months ago.
Okay.
And I'm at this wedding talking to all his buddies and all the bridesmaids with their boyfriends. So you gonna marry her? What are you waiting for? You guys have been
Yeah.
dating 3 years, and my wife's getting all embarrassed because I'm just interrogating every one of these young
Why
guys
not? You should. Yeah.
who've been
Yeah.
dating girls for 2 and 3 years, and it's like, what the fuck are you waiting for, bro? I guarantee you, there's a guy in her fucking science class at the university who would marry her tomorrow and who is talking to her day in and day out because you're not man enough to freaking lock it down. And they're always making excuses of, whoa, and it's like, there's no data that backs that, bud. I need to make more money before I get married and I need to do
Right.
this. It's like,
Yeah. It's not a thing.
dude, no, you need to just man up and do it. And some of the girls were loving it. They're like, yeah, when is he gonna, and then there's the other girls who are like, we don't need marriage, we're fine. It's like, yeah, but you do,
You do.
because otherwise subconsciously you or him are always going to have that exit available. Hit that exit button and they're gone.
That's exactly right. Because if,
It,
if you're if you're not going to make the commitment, then it means your commitment's always up in the air,
Exactly.
right? And so, yeah, there's no way the girl's gonna be, oh, it's totally fine. Because if a girl says that, she probably also has another guy waiting in the rafters that she can monkey branch to. Like that's one thing too, is girls, whenever a girl is finicky, like, oh, well, he kind of does whatever, and, I'm not really that serious. We're kind of on and off. That's because you also have other potential guys. And so you're not placing all your bets on one. But the girls who were like, yeah, why don't you, get serious? That's because the girls are actually saying, you know what? I kind of have all my chips in with you right now. I don't have anything else figured
Hmm.
out. And I want you to say, hey, you are going to be my woman. I do want to lead you. And here's where we're going. But if a guy doesn't have a sense of direction, the girls are like, hey, you're showing me all the signs that you're the kind of guy I should go for. How come you're not telling me what we're aiming for? And that eventually would also fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is something that one person might say it's hypocritical because me and my wife were together for a long time before we got married. But on the other hand, I didn't have men in my circle telling me the things that I'm telling. Men,
Yeah.
I didn't have men preaching their experiences to me that I try to preach to men. I'm sure you had something like that in your life that was the same. It's like, well, no one was telling me this, so I have to share this because this is the way, this is the path. Um, so it's like, guys, I'm sharing this because this needs to be said, and I can't go back and change it. It's just the way it happened for me.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, it's like I should have married my wife the first year I fucking met her.
But there also takes I think, I would argue that because you're a parent, and now that you're not just taking care of a wife, you also have children. I think now you're thinking to yourself, like, man, like men are so capable of providing so much and doing so much that all that worry and anxiety or uncertainty I had when I was younger, I should have just said, I can just freaking do it. And I think that's something that gets unlocked with biology. I'm a big, very big fan of that, to where I don't think it's possible for a man or a woman to ever feel like they're ready to have children. I think the children unlock certain part of your biology in a certain level, almost like playing a video game. All of a sudden, a brand new door appears and you have a key to the door now. Right? Like, you're not going to unlock that next potential unless you have a reason for it. And I think
Hmm.
that once you have kids, it's only when you're thrown into the gauntlet that now, once you have one, the second one seems easy to do. But the first one, I think, should be difficult. I think the same thing when it comes to relationships. When you're like, oh, should I get married? It's always this huge, big production because you don't really know what it's like to be there to fully take care of someone. But once you do, you're like, oh, dude, I should have just married her years ago. This is nonsense, right? And it's kind of funny. But the best thing you could do is, yeah, as a older brother figure in all these guys' lives, is say, hey,
Hmm.
look, stop fucking around. Stop being an idiot. This is a good woman. And it's hard to find good women. I'm letting you know that right now. I know you don't have everything figured out, but you have someone who's going to help you figure things out together. This is the one you should go with. And so telling guys, hey, it's okay to make that decision right there is good. Because most of the time nowadays, people want to string it out. Why are you getting
Yeah.
married? You should be dating for a long time. There's all this confusion going on in the world because no one's really out there preaching, hey, marriage is still a very good thing. No one's saying it anymore, right? So we all think, hey, I'm the most important person in my life. You got these things on the news where you have like women are marrying themselves and all this other nonsense that's going out. And it's like, yeah, people have lost the concept that marriage is actually something to aspire to. They think a lot of times that it's something that stupid people do. And I would
Yeah.
argue that there's also men's spaces who say the same thing. They'll be like, oh, well, you know, the risk is too high. Don't place all your bets on this woman. Da, da, da. Okay, well, it's like any investment. If you
That's
can't trust your own intuition and your own competency, I would argue there's probably something wrong with your brain. Because when a guy's not willing to risk a substantial amount of his well-being, his years, to build something that's supposed to matter more than anything else, your children, your family, if you're not going to put forth the risk because you're like, oh, she can give me an alimony court, and da da, I'm like, then dude, stay on the sidelines and complain, bro. Otherwise, real men are getting in the ring and we're actually doing something, because all those same guys will still tell you, oh, having a family is the hallmark of civilization. We're always stronger together. Why don't you have one? Oh, I would never marry a woman. Like, dude, what are you
hmm
talking about? What are you even doing? All you're saying is you don't think you're smart enough to vet the right woman. You're telling me that you don't even know what the right things are. You're going to argue that there's all these red flags in women, but you can't identify them yourself because look how scared you are, right? And I think there's a part of a man to where you're like, I'm going to go all in. Like my wife, I told her all the time, I'm like, I will never leave you. Like, I will never marry another woman ever again, which is also why I have her name tattooed on my wrist. I say, because I'm all in. You can
hmm
destroy me. You can cheat on me. It can all be over. I'll be fine. But guess what? I'm going to be very, very thankful for the years that I've known you and to say, hey, I gave it my best and didn't work out. I can do that. I have no problem, failing greatly, but I'm not going to go through life being too timid to give it a shot, if that makes sense. And I think that's the part about men where it's like, you have all these guys like, I'm going to be strong guys, but I don't want to make a commitment. Fabulous. Yeah. Fantastic. Great job, guys.
That's probably reason number two, and I've said it on this podcast, of why I started doing the podcast and stuff on social, is because
Mm-hmm.
I would hear guys on the internet, on social media, YouTube, having podcasts who are influential amongst young men, talking about never getting married,
Yep.
talking about like, I love tens, but I love hundreds, but I love tens better, or some stupid shit like
Oh.
that, implying that they love money and just good looking girls, and
Yeah.
not actually talking about making the commitment. And it's like, dude, these fucking guys, there might be things that they say that I agree with, but this
Mm-hmm.
part of their message is like, no, I gotta fucking talk about this stuff and encourage these young men. It's like, I promise you, you'll be fucking miserable if you live this guy's life. If you're trying to chase money and women and you don't actually commit to a good woman, there's a reason why Henry Ford says behind every successful man is a woman with a sharp stick. He says a woman. He says a woman. And if you go through life not committing and you're that guy who's 40, 50, and you're fucking sad, and you find someone else to marry you finally then, or even just be with you, they're probably sad too, because they're committing to a man who is not whole as a person, because you wanted to chase this fictitious life that at the end has no meaning. You're going to be miserable when you're sitting on your porch because there's no pitter patter of whether it's children or grandchildren around you. And I promise you, you'll get fucking stuck following those type of messages in a life of misery and desperation. It's just
I, I
not a
I
thing.
agree. I think that's something that, once again, I honestly believe that certain occurrences in our life change us at a biological level or just unlock
Mm-hmm.
certain stages of our development. And I think that a guy's never fully developed until he raises the child and has a family, right? I think that's the same thing for women. Like women can go around and, what you were saying before, waiting until they're 40 to kind of, look for a mate after they've been successful in business. It's like, yeah, well, when you were 20, your biology completely unleashed on you and you found out, hey, I have tremendous power over men. I can get men to call me all the time, to give me free gifts. I have tremendous power. But because they haven't gotten to the age 30 yet, they think to themselves, I don't need a man. I'll never get married. That's nonsense. I can keep doing what I'm doing. Then miraculously, and this has been charted, a woman to get around 30 years old, all of a sudden they have like come to Jesus moment where it's like, okay, now I want guys who are not dealing with all the nonsense. I just want a guy who's going to be good. It's like, yeah, interesting. It just changes on you because there is not enough wisdom being taught down through the generations. We no longer have grandmothers telling their daughters to tell their daughters how women should actually comport themselves in real life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that's very, very valuable. The wisdom's been shot away. Like people don't never listen to the grandparents. So grandparents tell you right now, you're dumb. Why aren't you married? What's wrong with you? Right?
Yep.
I'm strong, independent. I don't need that anymore, grandma. But guess what? All of a sudden, you turn 30, 35, you start regretting it. And you're like, man, I didn't realize that because they're trying to let you know at some point your biology will be woken up and you'll say, man, I really missed this. What the hell was I doing? Same thing with guys. It's not until you have a child to take care of that all of a sudden you're like, wow. I mean, a good example, one of my clients had a kid, this would have been maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. And he was saying, he's like, DJ, up until the point that Morgan was born, and he would say all the time, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to stop work. Very, very busy, successful lawyer. And he's like, when she was delivered and born, he said he went down there and he said, once he held her in his hands, he's like, I knew at that moment I didn't want to do my lawyer work. I just wanted to do everything I could to take care of her. He's like, I can't explain. I'm like, yeah, it's a biology thing. It gets unlocked. You have no idea what you want until it's there. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I think for guys, it's easy to sit here with your hubris and say, I don't need that. I can just keep dating girls. I don't need companionship, yada, 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 the MGTOW stuff, whatever people are going through. But then it's not until you hold your baby in your hands, you're like, wow, what I wouldn't give to give all my life to protect this thing. And it's not something you're supposed to cognize. It's something that comes out naturally. It's a God-given idea and feeling and gift that you now present to the world. But it's something that all of our ancestors did before us, which is why we can enjoy life today. Is the most beautiful thing is to give life and reproduce, move it down the line. So when guys say, "Oh, I can just not be with anyone or be with any woman I want to, never commit to anything, never stand for any true values other than my own hedonism," and then say also, "I don't really need kids," it's like, sure, buddy, you're not doing as much good as you think you're doing. You're just not, because there's nothing more beautiful than having kids. And when you have them, your whole mindset will change. And I don't have kids yet. Me and my wife are going to start having kids next year. We've already talked about it. And I know that that's something I'm aspiring to. I'm like, that's the next stage. In my life right now, I can't think of anything that's going to slow me down. I love working, getting up early in the morning, get up my grind. But I'm like, when the baby comes, I know something's going to unlock and it's going to change my viewpoint. I'm ready for that to happen. I'm
Mm-hmm.
open to it. Right. But it's also
It,
having enough wisdom to know that's what's going to happen.
it's so fucking cool, man. I remember when my wife
Yeah.
told me she was pregnant, I was fucking pumped.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Why are you so excited? This is a big deal." And I was like, "I know, let's go." I was like, I was so excited. And then when she told me she was pregnant with number two, I was like, "Oh, yeah, now we're going to have a second boy." She's like, "How do
No,
you
there we
know?"
go.
It's like, "I
Hey,
just know we're having another boy." It's cool being a father. You're going to enjoy it. You seem like the freaking right guy to have kids.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think I have enough. I've been an uncle for a long enough time with all my siblings
Hmm.
having children. And it's like, I can deal with it. But I think for me, it's I'm open to. I mean, in a selfish way, I truly believe that there are only certain things in life that can unlock that potential you have in you, and a child holds the key to the lock. I don't even know what's back there. I don't even think it's possible for a human being to know the depths of their stress tolerance, of their like patience until you have a kid. Because I see it all the time. I see parents flipping out on their kids, and I'm like, I don't even judge them. I'm like, I can understand. It must be very, very tough. I'm not in that boat yet, but I'm actually excited to know like what other depths, like, because I put it this way. I've heard it described this way before, and it's pretty cool that when you have a spouse, the woman that you're married to, when you're single, everything's pretty much neutral. Maybe plus 10 or minus 10, right? You have some good moments and then also not so bad moments, but you're very stable. You're in the center. Then you have a spouse, and maybe things are plus 100 and negative 100. So some of your happiest times ever are with your wife, and some of the worst times ever is getting in fights with your wife, right? All of a sudden you're like, man, if I were single, I'd never deal with this nonsense. And then
Hmm.
when you have kids, it's almost like a plus infinity, negative infinity, right? So it's like the kids will be like the happiest moments to where you can't believe it. Like your best memories in your life will always have your kids included. And then
Hmm.
some of the most taxing, terrible, tough times where you don't have anything left, your kids are still involved. And so I'm looking forward for the infinity journey of the plus and minus.
I gotta say, in my household, and I wish my wife was next to me so she could hear it.
Yeah.
It's infinity on the plus with the kids, but she's still the 100. My kids are like a
Yeah.
50.
Okay.
Oh yeah, my kids are fucking easy, man. Dude,
Well,
they're
you've lucked out on that. I've heard some
yeah,
stories, man.
yeah. Just I'll. This will be the one tidbit I give you on raising kids.
What's that?
There's no such thing as bad kids, just a lack of leadership.
I was gonna say I gotta give you your flowers. I can't just say luck. I agree. It's the way that you
Yeah,
guys run the household. Because I've seen a lot of kids go from being nice, soft kids, all of a sudden turning into a-holes, and I'm like, now what did you do to that kid? Right? It's like the kid only learned how to speak from other people. Like kids, human beings aren't born knowing how to speak, how to act.
hmm,
If we don't show them how to walk, they'll actually crawl their entire life. So they learn it from the people around them. So whatever they're doing, they're just like a good, solid, hard reflection of what you taught them. So if a kid has an attitude and goes back at you, you're like, dang, did I show you that? I didn't even think he was paying attention. He did notice that, and kids are quick. And I think that's the
they
part to
are.
where that's the objective self-reflection where it forces you as a parent to see yourself. Where you're like, my kid's a little terror. Like, damn, do I do that? Is that what I do too? And it'll make you stop, especially if you haven't contemplated that in the past. And so
Yeah,
that's it's an interesting thing about kids. They're very, very good at making you wiser.
yeah. We like to think that they're their own person, but we
Right.
literally fucking program everything about them.
Yep.
Now, my two sons, they look like twins, copy and paste. They are different, but everything, there's so many things about them that we program into the kids. I mean, shy kids, fucking every shy kid you've probably ever met at one point in their life, they thought they could take over the world. And it's the parents, the things that we do to them that force them to be shy, They're constantly apologizing because they're in a fear state of
Yeah.
how we react to them. Just everything, man. It's us parents. We just don't. We live in a culture where we don't have to take responsibility. We can say, "Oh, that's just how that kid is."
Right. I think that's a very good point too, because that's one thing that I've noticed is, you know, even between children in the family, you can have such a huge, vast difference in personality and actual like expression. But oftentimes it's because the environment that the next kid grows up in is not the same as the first one. So say, for
Yeah.
example, two parents, when it was my two parents and my older brother, that was the environment. As soon as my sister came along, she's now in the environment of my older brother and two parents. And now my older brother is now in the environment of his sister. And now the dynamics change, right? And then you have me. So dynamics are always changing.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is my older brother and me are very, very, very different growing up. His name is Kevin. My name is Damon. I'm named after my father. But with my father's relationship with his father, I had almost like my own set of expectations that were separate from him. And that's just my dad dealing with what he had to go through. And we had a discussion about it later on when we were adults because it ended up being something that made us feel contentious growing up. But yeah, I was very, very shy and guarded, and my older brother was very extroverted. But it was also because for him, he was encouraged to go play basketball and go out and go have fun. But no, you, Damon, you junior, you're going to read books like I did. You're going to do things like I did. So we had completely different environments growing up,
Hmm.
right? And same thing. So me being shy, super introverted, not being able to talk to people, unsure of myself is because the set of rules that I grew up in, the environment, and my expectations were different, but it came down from parenting. It really
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
All right, DJ. I want to thank you for coming on, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, this was great, man. I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah.
It's good chatting with you, man.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch.